Hey, this is Tom Webster for Sounds Profitable, Wednesday, April 30th, 2025. The Smart TV Factor, what growing connected TV listening means for podcasting. But first, twice a year, Sounds Profitable and Magellan AI update the Podscape, a living infographic providing a bird's eye view of the business side of podcasting. The form for the summer Podscape refresh, that sounds like a great party, doesn't it? There's probably a pool. Well, it's live, and we're taking submissions for new and updating companies until the end of the day, June 20th. So you have a little time, not a lot of time, somewhere in between of time. Well, I've been examining some fresh device usage data for podcast consumption from the Podcast Landscape, our flagship consumer study. And as usual, there are a few nuggets that might challenge our assumptions about how people consume our content. Today, I want to talk specifically about smart TVs and their growing role in the podcast landscape, but maybe not in the way that you think. Let's start with a baseline. Unsurprisingly, smartphones continue to dominate podcast consumption, with Apple iPhone users at 31% and Android smartphone at 27% when you ask, what is the device you primarily use? Now, that's followed by desktop and laptop computers at 16% in pretty solid third. But what caught my eye was, in fourth place, smart TVs hitting 8% as the primary device for podcast consumption. Now, that may not sound like much, but it's significant enough to warrant our attention, especially when we look at the secondary device numbers, because we also ask, what is the device you use second most? When we see smart TV usage growing for podcast consumption, the knee-jerk reaction is to assume that it's all about video podcasting. Kind of like assuming people at a Starbucks are actually there for the coffee and not just the Wi-Fi and the social permission to use the bathroom without buying anything. But the data tells a more nuanced story. When we ask smart TV primary users, that 8% who say the smart TV is what they use the most for podcasts, we ask them, when you think of a podcast, do you expect it to be audio or video? 8% say audio only, 39% usually audio but maybe video, 26% either, 22% usually video but maybe audio, and 6% video only. Overwhelmingly here, audio is coming to the surface. Now, this is fascinating because it suggests that smart TV podcast users aren't necessarily video absolutists. Rather, they're pragmatists who use whatever screen happens to be in front of them at that time. Now, for many Americans, especially in certain demographics, the smart TV has become the central hub of media consumption. It replaces both the traditional television and, in some cases, the computer. It's the digital equivalent of that one chair in your house where everything from mail to clothes to random Amazon packages somehow accumulates. And I have one right next to me. Well, speaking of demographics, here is where it gets really interesting. The smart TV primary user profile skews slightly male, 54% versus 46% female. But the age breakdown is what really surprised me. 18 to 34s were at 27%, 35 to 54, 36%, 55 plus, 37%. That 55 plus number is remarkably high for podcasting in general. Now, if you've been following this podcast for any length of time, you know I've been banging the drum about the untapped potential of the 55 plus audience for years. Well, it seems that smart TVs might be one of the keys to reaching this demographic. After all, I've been studying media long enough to know that people generally don't change their fundamental habits. They just pour their existing behaviors into new containers. Why? Well, because for many in this age group, smart TVs present a familiar form factor with larger text and easier navigation than smartphones or computers. They're already comfortable with the concept of a TV as their primary entertainment device. Smart TVs simply expand what's possible on a familiar screen. Remember when we used to joke about programming VCRs for our parents? Well, some of us. Well, it turns out they mastered those Roku remotes just fine, thank you very much. Now, I mentioned secondary device usage. I want to get back to that, because when we look at secondary device usage, another interesting pattern emerges. Of those who primarily use smart TVs for podcasts, 30% use Android smartphones as their secondary device, followed by iPhones at 19% and desktop laptop at 16%. Now, this suggests a fascinating user journey. These consumers might discover or even subscribe or follow their favorite podcasts on their TV, but then take that listening on the go with their phones. The smart TV becomes the discovery platform, while the smartphone enables the mobility that podcasting has always promised. It's like the reverse of the old Netflix start on your phone, finish on your TV behavior. Here they're discovering on the big screen and consuming on the small one. Contrast this with primary iPhone users, where 24% don't use a second device at all, or primary desktop laptop users, where 32% use an Android smartphone as their second choice. Each primary device creates a different multi-device pattern, which means different opportunities for engagement. So what should you actually do with this information? Well, here's a few thoughts. Number one, don't assume smart TV listening equals a video requirement. As the data shows, smart TV podcast consumers are quite flexible in their audio-video expectations. So don't feel pressured to create video content just because smart TV usage is growing. Sometimes a microphone is just a microphone. Number two, consider the 55-plus opportunity. If your show could appeal to older listeners, or already does, prioritizing smart TV distribution might give you a leg up with this demographic that's historically been harder to reach in podcasting. Number three, optimize for device switching. Make sure your show description, episode naming, and structure make it easy for listeners to pick up where they left off when switching between devices, especially between smart TVs and smartphones. And number four, think about discoverability on TV platforms. Smart TV interfaces are fundamentally different from podcast apps. Your cover art, titles, and descriptions need to work in these environments, which often prioritize visual browsing rather than search. Well, here's the bigger picture. The growth of smart TV podcast consumption isn't really about audio versus video. It's about meeting listeners where they are. For an increasing number of Americans, the smart TV has become the central screen in their lives, the default device that they turn to for media consumption of all kinds. This is yet another reminder that podcasting continues to mature and evolve as it reaches more mainstream audiences. The early adopters who discovered podcasting through iPods and RSS feeds are now joined by people who simply see podcasts as another content type available on the screens they use every day. And isn't that what we've been working towards all along? Podcasting becoming just another normal part of the media landscape, available wherever and however people want to consume it. Smart TVs aren't changing what podcasting is. They're just changing how some people access it. And that is a good thing for all of us, even if it means you now have to think about how your logo looks on a 65-inch screen 6 feet away instead of a phone held 6 inches from someone's nose. Thanks for listening to this week's podcast, The Smart TV Factor, What Growing Connected TV Listening Means for Podcasting. For Sounds Profitable, I'm Tom Webster, and I'll see you next week.